Good morning, everybody. Greetings to the Venerable Masters. Greetings to all. 尊敬的师父慈悲，诸位同修，阿弥陀佛。Let's quickly summarize what we discussed last time before diving into the remaining three precepts. We talked about the four verbal precepts, speech precepts. The fourth precept is abstention from false speech, 不妄語, bất vọng ngữ. The Buddha teaches not to tell lies for the benefit of self or other or for some reward. To uphold this precept is not to keep silent, not to be silent, but not to speak at all, but to learn how to communicate truthfully and factually. We should not only not tell lies, but when others tell us the truth, we should believe them and not discard the truth that they say for fear of losing our disadvantage. For example, we know that our friend was part of a crime. Because we were nearby, the police asked us to be in court to serve as a witness. When the investigator spoke his case and asked us for confirmation, if we deliberately lie to the judge, meaning that we're saying that the investigator did not speak the truth so that our friend would not be evicted, then we are committing an offense against the fourth precept because we are deliberately telling a lie for the benefit of others. We did not believe the investigator when he spoke the truth. So if deliberate lies in court go unpunished, then there will be no order in society. Corruption will take over. Therefore, it is not just Buddhists that observe the fourth precept, but everyone should observe this precept in society in order to maintain peace and harmony. The next precept, we talked about the fifth precept, abstention from slanderous or divisive speech. 不良舌, không nói lưỡi hai chiều. It is obvious to see that slanderous and divisive speech can cause disunity and disharmony. In a complex and sensitive situation, what you say can cause chaos initially, for better or for worse, such as whistle blowing. It really requires wisdom and courage to do the right thing, right? So it really depends whether what you say will bring true results and whether you have the courage or not. So that's why it's difficult to observe the speech precepts. The next precept, the sixth precept, is abstention from harsh speech. 不恶口, không nói lời hung ác. Harsh speech poisons the environment by causing insecurity and conflict. One effective way to uphold this precept, like we mentioned last time, is to rejoice in the merits of others. 随喜功德, 對喜功德. Kindly speech purifies and invigorates the environment. Kindly speech is like the warm rays of the rising sun that allow living beings under it to develop and grow. We should make our kindly speech as part of our normal conversations and not reserve kindly words for special occasions like the holidays. The last verbal precept that we talked about last time was abstention from frivolous speech. 不綺語, không nói thiêu dệt. To fully uphold this precept, it's not enough to just avoid gossips, but to say things that are meaningful and of value. For Buddhists, our goal is enlightenment, which means that for a Buddhist, meaningful speech is speech about the Dharma. For it is the Dharma that is the way, the means to enlightenment. As mentioned last time, Buddhism is not found in textbooks, but in our daily lives. These four precepts make up the verbal group of precepts. The next three precepts are related to the mind, which will be our main discussion for today. Are there any questions or comments before we dive into the main part of the lecture? Yes.
Question. Like last time you said no 不妄语,
No false speech.
no false speech. In the time of Buddha was lying to what is a hunter was chasing the rabbit, and then the Buddha the rabbit would run into the right, but then the hunter asked the Buddha, "Where's the rabbit?" And the Buddha says, "Is will turn into the left." So consider that Buddha lying, or because of saving the rabbit. That's why Buddha was lying. So because of that, Buddha will be what is it called? A consequence to that.
Yeah. So what will be the consequence of his action?
Yes.
Right. Because the Buddha, there was a story in the sutra where the hunter was chasing a rabbit, and at a corner, he lost sight of the rabbit. But instead of finding a rabbit, he found the Buddha, or an early life of the Buddha, a previous life of the Buddha. And so he asked that person whether he had seen the rabbit, and he said yes, he had seen the rabbit. And the hunter said, "Which way did it go?" And the Buddha pointed to the opposite direction, another direction, so that the hunter would not kill the rabbit. So I think from this story we can learn from it from several angles. One is, when we do something, there will be a consequence. Whether good or bad, there will be a consequence, because we have created intentional action. Even though not every action will have a karmic effect, but the fact that we have this intention to do something, it carries heavy karmic weight, so it will likely to come to fruition. So the Buddha lied in a sense of saving a sentient being. Of course, we are assuming that the hunter did not have good intention to feed his tribe, his people, but he was hunting maybe out of sports, out of just sports who wants to kill and to torture that animal. So we are assuming that the Buddha was protecting the rabbit, and telling a lie to the hunter was because the hunter was chasing after that rabbit to torture, to kill the rabbit for fun, and not to kill the rabbit to feed his family. If it was to feed a bigger family, then that may be a different story, because the hunter could be saving more people. The rabbit will be sacrificed, but the meat of the rabbit could be saving a lot of people. And here we're assuming that it's a good thing, because he would be saving a lot of good people, not bad people. So there are so many angles that we have to understand in order to say what the Buddha did or what the hunter did was bad or good. We don't know, because the sutra didn't give us a lot of details as to why he was chasing and to why the Buddha was saying what he was saying. But the scripture led us to believe that what the Buddha did was right, was because he did not want the hunter to commit the killing offense, killing transgression, to face suffering in the hells, probably because of bad intention. Because if a hunter was to kill a rabbit to feed his family, I don't think it would lead him to hell. But if the hunter was out of sports, he wants to torture that rabbit, then it's another story. He would likely to be suffering in the realms of hell, right? So what the Buddha said did not violate the false speech precept, because he did it with the intention to save the hunter from suffering in hell, but also to save the life of the rabbit. But he had committed the offense of telling lies in a sense that there will be karmic consequence for it, because he deliberately told a lie to the hunter. Does that make sense? So he will reap the the retribution for his lying. But the retribution would probably be very small. It would not affect him much because the fact that he had give rise to compassion, he would be able to absorb that karmic effect. Just like a drop of salty water in a big bowl. The salt is still there, but you will not feel the effect. So out of compassion, sometimes when we want to practice bodhisattva, we do things that will bring harm to us, but for the benefits of the many. But even not the many, but for another person, we're willing to sacrifice, to face hardships in order for somebody else to not have to go through that, because they do not have the ability to endure. Just like a mother who is willing to sleep in soil bedsheets so that her child can sleep on the clean side of the bed. When the child is very small, he may have dirty soil the bed, but because late at night, she doesn't have a means of changing it. So she's willing to suffer for the benefits of her child. So a bodhisattva, in the same way, is willing to do that, not because he wants to commit an offense for his own benefit, but because he wants to prevent the hunter from suffering in the realms of hell. Does that make sense? He did not violate a major offense, but there will be a karmic consequence for his action.
But if there's no cause,
Uh-huh.
so
No, there is a cause because he intentionally lied to the hunter. Right? Not to save the hunter from suffering in the realms of hell, but also to save the current life of the rabbit. But because he was a bodhisattva, he was willing to absorb that disadvantage, if you will. He was willing to take on that disadvantage in order to save somebody. You have $10, and you could have used that $10 to enjoy yourself, but you donate the $10 to a homeless person so that they could be happy or be full that day. But you're not going to face hunger. You're not going to die from hunger because you can always go home and eat. It's just that for that moment, you'll be inconvenienced. You'll be hungry for a little bit, but you know that at home, there's a lot of food. So it would not bother you to give that $10 to endure the hunger of hardship for a few minutes or for an hour until you get home. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Oh, you sure?
Not really.
Oh, so what?
Because the money you give to the homeless, it kind of different with what Buddha did.
No, what I'm trying to say is, the Buddha could have just stayed silent. He didn't have to answer, and he would have avoided. Or he say, "I'll tell the truth. So I don't want to violate any precept." The rabbit went that way. I saw it with my own eyes. Then the rabbit would have been killed, and the hunter would have committed a major offense in killing because he had the intention to torture the rabbit. But here, the Buddha was compassionate enough to lie. In a sense, he did lie, right? Based on the facts, he did lie. But that is not considered to be a major offense against the precept to be born in the realms of hell, even though it was intentional. But intentional in the sense that to save somebody. So you have two things on your hands. One is compassion, which has a lot of merit. The other one is offense, which is sin, if you will. But the compassion outweighs the sin. And so that, yes, the sin will come to fruition from lying, intentional lying. But that karmic effect is not enough to make him suffer. Just like the $10 you give, yes, you're going to be hungry for the next 30 minutes. But at home, you have a lot of food, whereas that homeless person he's going to be hungry for the rest of the day. The suffering of his is more than yours, so you can absorb it because of your compassion. When we have compassion, it helps us to overcome our own suffering. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Is it clear now? So the 8th precept is abstention from covetousness, which is, we're now going from the verbal precepts to the mental precepts. So the precepts of abstention from covetousness, 不贪, không tham muốn. The Buddha explains there is a case where a certain person is covetous or greedy. He covets the belongings of others, thinking, oh, that what belongs to others would be mine. So this is unskillful mental action. Then the Buddha says later on in the sutra, there is a case where a certain person is not covetous. He does not covet the belongings of others, thinking, oh, that what belongs to others would be mine. So he doesn't have that thinking, and he doesn't have the desire to take from others. So this is skillful. So the Buddha, in this sutra, the Buddha was being very complete, right? He told us the unskillful side of it and how to avoid it, and then the skillful side of it and how we should continue to increase our advance in that. Going back to the traditional threefold study, precept, samadhi, wisdom, 戒定慧三学, tam học giới định tuệ. One can say that the first 7 precepts of body and speech belongs to the precept study, 戒, giới, which deals with ethical behavior. The 8th and 9th precepts that we will discuss today deal with greed and anger, hatred, which are mental conducts. So they belong to samadhi, or meditation and concentration, 定, 忍. And then lastly, the 10th precept belongs to wisdom group, 智慧, trí tuệ. In its negative form, the 8th precept consists of abstention from covetousness or greed, 貪愛, 貪愛. The Pali word here rendered as covetousness being abhita, right? Abhita means covetousness or greed. Analyzing the term, one master indicated that the second part of the word abhita is from sayati. And sayati means to meditate, to contemplate, to think over, to hunt after, to pursue. From the word jhana. Jhana means 禅定, 听人, meditation. It's also derived. So there is some similarity that has the same root. Abhi is means very much or greatly. So putting it all together, abhija, covetousness, therefore suggests a mental state of intense thinking upon or mental pursuit of something by which we are attracted, 追求, 追求, or which we desire, right? So that's intense desire. That's what it means. Covetousness is this intense desire to want to have something. That's what the term suggests. In other words, it signifies a mental state of covetousness or greed or selfish craving, 贪心, 当贪. From the nature of covetousness, 贪, we can see that this kind of mental state has greed, lust, longing, desire, thirst, excitement, and passion. When we uphold this precept of no greed, we are trying to eliminate these mental states of greed, lust, longing, desire, thirst, excitement, passion, and so forth. So that's what it means to observe this 8th precept, is to get rid of those mental states that give mental states that give rise to unskillful, selfish desires. It is a state essentially in which the ego, the self, 自我, 本我, reaches out towards the non-self or non-ego, 我所 or 我手. So the the subject reaching out to the object with a desire to appropriate it, even to incorporate it, 爱取, 爱图. Therefore, trying to fill the deep pit of its own inner poverty and emptiness. So what this means is that when we are reaching out with the desire to possess something, we want to have something, we are basically telling ourselves that I don't have it, I'm lacking it, and I'm needing it because I don't have it. Right? When we reach out something, that you are telling yourself that you don't have it, you need it. If we are reaching out because we want to feel happy, for example, we want to hang around with friends, or we want to go to party, or we want to go shopping because we want to feel happy, then we are telling ourselves that I lack happiness inside. I'm empty of it, and I need to acquire it. Does that make sense? When you desire something, that means you don't have it. So you are essentially telling you that you are empty. You don't have enough. That's why you want to reach out. You desire something. Does that make sense?
Same thing when you're hungry.
Yeah. When you're hungry, that means your body lacks food. Therefore, you want to eat. So the same thing when we see a nice new car or a nice new shirt, we want it. That means we don't have it. That means we feel like we need it. We may not need it because we have clothes already, but the fact that we want it, we have forgotten what we have, and we focus on what we don't have. Does it make sense? Okay. Since it's not really possible to appropriate an external object in this way, 不能保持相状空有體保持個tướng trạng呢? Because there is nothing that can stay in our control forever and unchanging. So when we want to have something, we want it to make us happy. We want it to remain as is forever to make us happy because we want to be happy. We want that to make us happy. Therefore, we don't want it to change so that it can stay like that forever so that we can be happy forever. Does it make sense? So when you want a nice car, for example, that means you're telling yourself that you don't have something to make you happy, so you're depending on that nice car to make you feel happy. But that car will change. It will grow. It will be old. It will get old. It will break down. It will no longer look nice and beautiful. But the fact that you want it to be happy, that means you are not accepting it to change. Therefore, you will face disappointment because it will change. Let's say that you want your friend, you feel sad, you want your friend to make you happy. But the friend cannot be there with you 24/7. He or she will have to go to work or do something else, right? But you want that friend to be there for you to make you happy. Therefore, you are not allowing the situation to change. But the situation will change because nothing can stay unchanged forever. Does it make sense? 无常, volatile, impermanence, because things will change. And so if you want that person to make you happy, then you are going to face disappointment because that person can never behave like the way you want, can never always be there, and that person will be agitated sometime, or will have to go to do something to attend their own duty. So when you expect that person to be there to make you feel happy, then you're going to face disappointment because you have this desire to want that situation or that object to make you happy. But that situation, that object will change. Therefore, it will not be the same object, the same situation that you originally desired to make you happy. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And when we want it to make us happy, that means we want it to belong to us forever. And there is nothing that's forever. Things will change. It will not be the same object, will not be the same person. That person will have different mood. Initially, that person might tolerate us, but that person could change his or her mood and will not tolerate our behavior anymore. So that person has become a different person, and we will be disappointed because that person is no longer the same as what we expect. This happens a lot in marriages. First, people get together because they love each other, right? They think that that person is who can make them happy. Like, for like they think that that partner can be with them forever to make them happy. That's why they're willing to come together as a union to get married. But after a while, 20 years, 30 years, that partner has changed. Now that partner has different view, different outlook, different thinking, different aspiration. Is no longer the same. But if you are attached to that and you're not willing to allow that person to grow, then you're going to face disappointment because you are expecting that person to serve happiness to you, to be like that when you first met. Does it make sense? And so you're not allowing that person to change, to grow, and therefore you are facing disappointment. Does it make sense? Yeah. So what I'm trying to say here is, when we want things to remain forever in order to make us happy, that is a state of covetousness, greed, time. And therefore, it is also a state of perpetual frustration. 贪就是永远不满意的境界. Lòng tham là cảnh giới vĩnh viễn không được mãn ý. Does it make sense? Lòng tham, cái tâm tham là cảnh giới vĩnh viễn không được mãn ý. Vừa ý, không được vừa ý. Because things will change. But we expect that partner to make us happy when we first met. When we were 18, we fell in love. And we say, that person is my soulmate. All right? But now that person is older, has bad habits, we found out. So that person is not the same 18-year-old prince or princess that we met many, many years ago. But that person has now wrinkles, right? That person has bad habits. That person snores. That person, all this stuff is no longer the same. Unless that person knows how to cultivate merits, tu phước, xiu fu, then that person will continue to be handsome, even or beautiful in his or her old age, right? So that it will be a special case where that person's merit, fu bao, phước bao, increases over time, and we will find that person to be more attractive. But if we don't cultivate merits ourselves, then we will not be able to follow. That person will continue to grow further and further away. Will continue to go this way and this way. So what happens is that we will be jealous of that person. That person is beautiful. That person is attractive. Other people find him or her our partner very attractive, and therefore we will give rise to jealousy. Hey, why don't other people pay attention to me? But why is my partner so popular? So that means we are digressing, right? So what we should do is, instead of trying to control the outcome, the result, but we should put in the right efforts. We should continue to cultivate merits, tu fu, xiu fu, so that we can be consistent with our partner. If we want our partner to stay with us, then we should be consistent. But that's still not reliable, because one day that partner will pass away. Either we pass away first or our partner passes away first. So it's more reliable that we understand the law of conditionality and that we are mentally prepared for change. Does it make sense? Okay. So wanting to possess something out of desire is to prevent change from happening. But impermanence, 无常, 不thường, is natural. Therefore, the result is perpetual frustration, 苦, 口. He does not understand that all phenomena are ultimately dissatisfactory, ever-changing, and insubstantial. 一切法都是苦, 无常, 无我. Tất cả pháp đều là khổ, vô thường, vô ngã. To reemphasize, when we try to control something, making it our own and not allowing it to change, to grow, to develop, we will be building a world of frustration and disappointment for ourselves. Cool. Does it make sense? For this reason, the term of hita is often combined in Pali scriptures, 南传经典, kinh điển của Nam truyền, with the term domanassa, which means distress, dejectedness, or melancholy. Yo li, nỗi đau buồn. That's why the greed leads to distress, suffering, nỗi đau buồn. Tâm tham sẽ đem đến nỗi đau buồn. In other words, the precept of no greed is concerned with the state of being split and pulled between craving an object and the object of desire. 我跟我所的对立, sự đối lập của ngã và ngã sở, meaning that you are being pulled by your own desire and the object of desire. And therefore, it's never in a state of peacefulness. It's always in a state of polarization, a state of being pulled, being agitated, frustration, was being in a state of frustration. Does it make sense? When you have desire, your mind can never calm down because you want to have it. And therefore, you're never satisfied. Therefore, you're in a state of frustration because you're never satisfied because you don't have it and you want to have it. So your mind is always chasing afterwards. So let me give you an example. When a person does not have what he desires, he is dissatisfied and suffers, right? Because I don't have it, I want to have it, and because I don't have it, I feel dissatisfied and I suffer. Is that clear, right? That part is clear, right? After he's got it, and if he enjoys it, then he's going to want even more, looking for ways to have more of it. So that means he's still not satisfied. He wants to have it. For example, when a person falls in love with another person, you don't just look at that person once or glance at that person. You want to keep looking at that person, right? Because you want to enjoy the beauty of that person. That means you want to have more of the beauty of that person. Does it make sense? So if you have no interest in that person, you don't even want to look at that person, or you don't care to look at that person. But once you have this romantic desire for that person, you want to keep looking at that person. Does it make sense? Because your desire wants you to enjoy more of that experience. Does it make sense? Okay, so that's why you cannot, once you have desire, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop at one glance. You want to continue to look at that person 24/7. You don't want that person to leave. Therefore, having desire does not make you feel satisfied, because you want to have this, you feel unsatisfied and you want to look at that person more and more and more. That's why you feel dissatisfied. You may think that you are feeling happy to look at that person, but in actuality, you are very dissatisfied with that state and you want to have more of it. Does it make sense? Yeah, that's greed, that's desire, because you want to have more. If you are satisfied, then you don't need to look at that person. Does it make sense? This is important because it helps us to understand the 8th precept, why greed is suffering. When we have desire, we are not satisfied. That's why we have desire. If you have no desire, then you are contented. You are happy. You are mãn ý. You're mãn ý, vừa ý. Does it make sense? Barbara, does it make sense? Okay. Because nothing can stay satisfactory forever, the only conclusion for him is anxiety of not having more of it and the fear of losing it. So your object of desire, that person's so beautiful, you want to, first love, you want to look at that person. You want to have more. For first thing, you are deep down you are unsatisfied. That's when you want to have more of it. Secondly, is you are afraid that person may not respond to you positively, or go with another guy or another girl. So there is fear of losing that person. If he doesn't enjoy it, then he gets upset. He wants to get rid of it as soon as possible, right? So, because all phenomena are ever-changing, 无常, 无thường, based on conditions and have no substance of the self-nature, 自性, tự tánh, 无常, 无我, vô thường, vô ngã. Trying to control and possess anything will only lead to fear and frustration. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Does this sound too negative and sad? Okay. We have no fear because we should be glad to know that there is a positive side to this. So I am not disappointing you today. I'm giving you some hope, some aspiration here. For the positive counterpart of abstention from covetousness, 无貪, vô貪, there is no term that is suitable. In the context of the 10 positive precepts, we speak of abandoning covetousness for generosity. So there's no single word to say, on the positive side, to compensate for covetousness. But what is suitable is to practice generosity. So in other words, the positive counterpart of abstention from covetousness, vô貪, 無貪, is generosity, 不施, 無體. Does it make sense? So that's the positive side of no greed. No greed, it's one side, sounds negative, but generosity, joy in generosity is more positive. So that's the positive counterpart. So a complete picture. Does it make sense? Just as covetousness, greed, represents the mental state on account of which one takes what is not given, so the positive counterpart of abstention from covetousness, meaning 空貪, 無貪, should represent the mental state of practicing generosity, 不施, 無體, giving to those in need. In addition to knowing that greed leads to frustration, we should abandon greed for generosity. So it's not enough just to say I have no greed. I'm not greedy for those things. But we should find a joy in giving those in need. Does it make sense? One is when you say I don't desire things. I'm not greedy for things. Your mind can calm down, right? Because you're not reaching out to try to own it. The other side is to give, to find joy in that giving. Does it make sense? Barbara, does it make sense to you that one side is to know the calm of no greed because you are satisfied, because you're not reaching out. We just talked about that greed leads to dissatisfaction because because it makes you want to have more and more. So that's no greed. But that's only half the story. The other half of the story is to give in generosity, to have that joy in that generosity. 不施不提. Yes.
If you say giving out, for example, if in the relationship, and because of the distance because of the guys or the girl become more beautiful and they got attracted by another person. So if we say instead of no greedy, you have to give out. So it's really like you bring that person to give out to another person?
No. In a relationship, when you have no greed, meaning that you don't expect that person to serve you, to make you happy all the time. In a relationship where you have greed is when you expect that person to make you happy, to stay young, to stay beautiful, to stay happy all the time, to make you happy like when you two first met. So that's greed. The second, in terms of generosity giving, is to make that person happy. Not to give her away, but to make her happy, value, to make him happy, value. To give what you have about, you think about the other person. Does it make sense? It's not to give that person away. I mean, if you don't treat that person well, that person will not want to stay. While the person may not have the ability, maybe financially restricted, to leave the relationship, but in that person's heart, that person is already has departed. And so to give here is to give the other person, to give our attention to that person, to give our loving kindness to the other person. Not to expect the other person to give us attention, to give us care, to give us loving kindness. But we want to give our loving kindness by paying attention to the other person.
To the third person?
No, to that.
To the person that took.
Two people.
Two people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good, Barbara? Okay. So what we're saying here is we don't just see the negative side of the precept, that it will lead to frustration and suffering, but we should see the positive side of the precept, which is the joy of generosity, 布施 bodhi, 看得到布施和无贪的安乐, right? Nhìn ra được sự an lạc của không tham và bố thí. Such a state could, of course, be spoken as a state of depolarization. 心没有对立, tâm không có đối lập. To avoid building up the desire to try to fill the emptiness inside of what you think you don't have. So that's like this polarization is like, I want to have it. That person, no, I'm chasing it. And I cannot have it, but I want to have it. I don't have it, but I want to have it. So that's polarization. So when you observe this precept, you depolarize it, meaning you remove that conflict, 对立, đối lập, between your desire and the object of desire. Does it make sense? So that's one way of dealing with it. The second is that it could be spoken as a state of detachment, 放下, buông bỏ, except that term 2 is negative. One master suggested tranquility, 舍, sa, as something more positive for the counterpart of abstention from covetousness. So the positive side of abstention from covetousness is tranquility. When you are tranquil, sa, you are very calm, you are very contented, there is no desire for you to want to own something because you are complete. When you are full, there's no need for you to look for food to eat. You only want to look for food to eat because you are hungry. So when we have desire, that means we are hungry inside, that we want to look for it. When we are not greedy for something, we are not pursuing it, we're not trying to own it, therefore we can avoid a state of frustration and suffering, meaning the state of peacefulness. Right? So when we practice and observe this precept, abstention from covetousness, then we are building a mental state of peacefulness. Does it make sense? Okay. I think the connection between the 8 precept of no greed and meditation should now be obvious. So can you see the connection between the 8 precept and meditation? Meditation is the direct method of raising the level of consciousness, whereas the indirect way is how we live our life, such as right livelihood, 正命, 真满. Since consciousness, what we talk about here, 心意, tâm ý, is made of various mental states. There are multiple methods of meditation that can directly raise the level of consciousness. So when we practice tu hành, 修行, we are raising a level of consciousness. We are more aware. It will lead to enlightenment, 觉悟, giác ngộ, enlightenment, right? So that's the whole point. We want to raise a level of consciousness, awareness, so that we don't get trapped, so that we don't make mistakes to face suffering in the future. And that's what cultivation is about. So when we practice this, there are two ways to raise our level of consciousness. One is direct way, 直tiếp, 直接. The other is indirect, gián tiếp. For example, there are the five desires. Desire for wealth, affection or sex, fame, food and drinks, and rest. 五欲, 財, 色, 名, 食, 睡. Ngũ dục là năm cái dục. Tài, sắc, danh, thực, thùy. There are different methods to treat those unskillful mental states of selfish desires. Again, we have desire because we want the object of our desire to belong to us forever, unchanging. For example, we want to be wealthy forever. We want to be famous forever. We want our food to be delicious forever. We want to rest forever without needing to lift a finger to do anything. There is nothing wrong with wealth, fame, food, or sleep. The problem becomes when we don't see the reality of dissatisfaction, impermanence, and no self. 看不到苦无我无常, nhìn không thấy được khổ vô thường vô ngã. So in that experience, we don't see the trap of dissatisfaction. Does it make sense? So there's nothing wrong with money. Where it becomes wrong is that we want to have money forever. We keep chasing it. That we have greed for money. Does it make sense, right? So when we have raised the level of consciousness, the intensity of our desire begins to lessen, becomes less and less. Slowly we begin to return to the state of tranquility, 舍, 洒, the state of peacefulness. Do you agree? When we have no greed, we are returning to that state of peacefulness. We don't chase after it anymore. For example, before you fell in love, it never occurred to you to chase after that person. But let's say that you fell out of love, you don't love that person anymore, you're not being bothered. Không có bận rộn để mà chạy theo. You no longer bother to chase after beauty anymore. So your mind calms down. Does it make sense? So you're returning to the state of peacefulness. Covetousness, greed, is the desire to reach out of the self or the ego, 自我, bản ngã, towards the non-self or non-ego, 我所, ngã sở, leading to the frustration of not having. So that's what it is a desire. You want to reach out to have it. So meditation stops the reaching out from happening. When you sit in meditation, you are happy. You are no longer thinking about your object of desire. Your new car, new clothes, party, whatever, right? When you sit in meditation, you are absorbed. You are no longer reaching out. Does it make sense? This is very important. So I need you to follow me. This is called samatha meditation. 修止, tu chỉ, là ngừng lại. Because in such situations, one is satisfied and does not feel the need to reach out. When you are sitting in meditation and you are blissful, there is no thinking that you need to reach out to make you feel complete, because you are already complete in that moment. And then when one practices vipassana meditation, 修观, tu quán, quán tưởng, quán chiếu, one can eradicate covetousness by realizing the pointlessness, the futility of trying to possess the object of desire. One begins to realize what is the point of chasing something out of greed, as it will only lead to frustration, anxiety, and fear. So therefore, you see the pointlessness of chasing after something that you are never going to have. Even if you have it, it will never make you happy. So there's no point in chasing after something that will not make you happy. Is it clear, or do I need to give an example? Okay. I knew you would ask that. So let's say, for example, people chase after money because they think that money can make them happy. But after they have the money, they will feel that they find that they still feel like they don't have enough. Right? So it is because they don't see and appreciate what they have, but they can only see what they don't have. Therefore, they will never have it because they don't see it. Therefore, how can you have something you don't see? They don't see contentment, mãn ý, vừa lòng, mãn ý. They don't have they cannot see contentment. Therefore, they can never have contentment. So when they chase after money, they think they are chasing after happiness, but in reality, they are chasing after frustration. Does it make sense? Therefore, chasing after happiness in this world is really chasing after frustration, anxiety, and fear. Anxiety for not having what you don't have, and fear for losing what you have acquired. Does it make sense? Good example? Okay. So the result is that they will continue to stay in the mental state of not having enough, the perpetual state of frustration, or the state of perpetual frustration. 永远不满意, right? 永远không vừa lòng. There are several meditations of this kind. Briefly, we don't have enough time to go over in details, and we can introduce the different methods next time. We have kind of covered them before, but one can practice recollection of death when you don't want to have something, then you know that you're gonna be dying. Then your desire for it will lessen dramatically because you're now focused on something more important. You stop worrying about the nice car that you want to buy. You're probably going to use that money to treat your illness or to make you feel better. Or the recollection of impurity. quan sân bù jing, oán thân bất tịnh, không sạch sẽ đó. So when you love somebody, you're crazy about that person. And when you think about that person growing old, having bad habits, snoring, and all the dirtiness, then your desire for that person will lessen. I mean, your selfish craving, it just the kind of craving that leads to suffering will lessen. The eighth precept, abstention from greed or covetousness, 无贪, vô贪, belongs to the group of mental action, 意业, 意nghiệp. Buddhists not only must abstain from greed, but should also practice tranquility, 舍杀, peacefulness. The most effective way to achieve tranquility and peacefulness, 舍杀, and eliminate greed is through the practice of meditation, right? With meditation of samatha meditation and vipassana meditation, calming down meditation and wisdom meditation. One is to stop your desire, stop you from reaching out. The other one is to see things clearly, because by constraining yourself, there's no guarantee you won't do it again. Because once the constraint is lifted, you're going to want to go and grab it again. But if you know that behind that, you understand clearly, you see clearly of suffering, dissatisfaction, impermanence, and insubstantiality,苦无我无常, right? 口无thường vô ngã, then you know it's pointless. Why am I chasing after anxiety and disappointment? Then you stop. So without the constraint, you will still stop. So that's meditation is an effective way to eliminate greed. So and we when we say meditation, we have this meditative bliss. It will prevent the ego from reaching out to try to possess something. Does it make sense? Right? Are there any comments or questions about the eight precept? Is it clear? Right. So again, the eight precept, one is to understand the peacefulness of no greed. Sự an lạc của không tham. Right? Ủ than tơ an le. Ủ than tơ an le. So that's one. That's half the story. The other half of the story is to find joy in our generosity. 布施 bodhi. So that is more a complete picture. Right? One is so this way we are not so pessimistic, but we are being proactive to create a better future for ourselves and for others. Are there any other comments or questions? Because we are running out of time. So we will continue next time. I was hoping to complete today's lecture to cover 3 mental precepts, but we have only covered 1. So you're gonna have to sit and endure my lectures more next time when we come back and to talk about the precept of abstention from hatred and abstention from false view.